Prior to starting the business, I had worked at educational nonprofits and I decided to go back to school. So then I got a master's degree in education and a teaching credential. And from there, I worked in higher education for about 8 years. And I had the opportunity to work with a lot of teachers, vice principals, resource teachers, counselors, because I co created youth programs with the university and our school partners. And from all that experience working with administrators and school staff, I learned a lot about how to navigate school systems effectively and also how to create a really enriching academic environment at home. So I decided to start Education Solution. Um, the goal of Education Solution is to provide affordable services that are customized to parents' needs and very accessible. So I can do plans over email or video call or phone call so I can meet the parents' needs that way. So what I do is I offer support navigating school systems, and that includes if you have an IEP, I can help support those issues. I create personalized learning plans to help parents engage with their children's learning at home. And I also help parents select a school. And I always get information about the parents and the families for all of these issues so that I can tailor the plans to the family as best as
Right, because
possible.
in kindergarten, that's a big deal. There's so many choices, especially if you're in a big city like here in San Diego. It's like, where do you even start? Do I go public school? Do I go charter? Do I go private? Magnet? What does that all even mean?
Yeah, there's
So,
so many choices. In a way, it's great to have choices, but it can also be very overwhelming. So that's part of the reason why I decided to offer that for parents as well.
yeah. All right, well, I'm excited to have you today. You're my first guest. So hopefully if people like it, if you're out there and you see us and you like this guest business, can you give us a little emoji or just say, hi, Kelly and Alana, I'm here. I see there's four of you, so somebody's out there. Um, Also, Alana, I happen to know Alana. She's a member of this group. She also was a mom at school, and she had that my children went to. So that's how I ended up knowing her. So we had all these different ways that we knew each other, and now she's kind of a trusted advisor for me. um, so you're at Education Solution, and that's based in San Diego, but you help anybody, right? So how do they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at www.educationsolutionhacks.com, or you can message me on Facebook. And I can help anyone, usually the United States because I know the United States school system, but I can help anyone from across the country. I have visited schools all over the country, and I'm familiar with the public school system here. I'm familiar with charter schools, and I've worked with some private schools as well.
Right. So, and then like a lot of times you do where people send you an email and you'll answer emails for free, but if they need a more in-depth program, then that's your strength.
Yes.
Okay.
So for this group, definitely, if you have an education question or you're worried about something, feel free to contact me and we'll do a free, short, kind of fitting consultation. I'm happy to do that over email, video, phone call, whatever is best for you.
Okay. So now that we understand what you do and how you do it, let's get to the nitty gritty. We had a bunch of questions that people asked in advance. So we're going to answer
Hmm.
those. And if there's time and you're watching and you have a question, you can type it in and we'll do our best to get to it, but I can't promise. Um, so one of the questions, let's start with some easy tips. When the first week of school, when you're starting school, how do you not set yourself up to become that parent, like the one that the teacher kind of cringes? And what do you do to have a successful first week what's the first week of school like for a teacher and what should we do and not do?
So the first week of school for a teacher is extremely, extremely busy. I think we all have had experience with busy seasons, whether you're staying at home as a parent or you're working. So you can imagine, like, if somebody's contacting you and asking you questions during your busiest moments. So what you want to do, in my opinion, is start off. I always like to start off the school year with a thank you card for the teacher. You can just give a card to the teacher saying thank you. You can slip in like one piece of information. I usually slip in my child is sensitive, and then a gift card. And that way you're not trying to pull the teacher aside and have a conversation when they may not be able to really focus or listen to you because they're so busy. But you're also having a really nice positive conversation. and thanking them for all of their hard work right from the beginning.
And when do you give it that the first day of school, or do you kind of wait? Like, when's a good time to do that?
I do that the first day of school. The first week is rough, so I wanted to start off. The first day is really hard, so I like to start off with a thank you immediately.
Okay.
Um, yeah, just to make their day a little better.
Yeah, I can imagine it's hard to get to know 24 little people all at once, or
Right.
30 in some cases. That's funny. I go to a school where I know most of the teachers our kids do, and the first Friday of school, I give them like a bottle of champagne or beer or something like that. But that might not be appropriate at every school. Um, what else? When there's something that you're really worried about the first week of school, you really want the teacher to know, when is it appropriate to talk about that?
So, like I mentioned, the first week of school, they're getting to know the kids. There's a lot of paperwork happening. There's probably some administrative meetings. They're probably preparing for orientation or curriculum nights, whatever your school does. So, I usually, if you have like a small concern, like something that you would like to discuss, but it doesn't have to be discussed immediately, I would wait until the first week passes. Again, because you want the teacher's full attention. And if they're too busy worried about a bunch of different things, you really might not hold their focus. Plus, you just want to give them some space to do their job if possible that first week. If it's an extreme concern, like your child is maybe being bullied already, or then definitely still talk to the teacher. But I would really try to categorize, like, is this something I need to speak to the teacher immediately, or can this wait a week?
Okay. And what's the best way to do that? Because at some schools it's really hard to get FaceTime with the teacher, but you don't necessarily want to email them either. That can not always go well. So what's the best way to talk to the teacher?
So I think different schools have different methods of communicating with parents, and this is part of the reason I like to try to tailor things as much as possible. So there are schools that use Class Dojo. A lot of the public schools use that. Some teachers prefer email. Some teachers you're going to have to grab in person. Um, so because usually you get more of that information at curriculum night, which may not be like the first day of school, it might be the second week of school. If you have a really big issue, I would just try to say, hey, I have something I really want to talk to you about in person. And then just ask when is a good time or how is the best way for you to communicate
Okay.
right now.
So emailing them and say, hey, I have something that's on my mind. It's about this. Can I like grab you for 3 minutes after school? So they know to look for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. I like to give them a heads up. So if you do it via email, or even if you try to talk to them before school starts, but don't try to have a whole meeting with them before school starts. Just say, hey, can we set up a time to talk? Because usually teachers are very efficient and they've planned every minute of their day, so they might need that time to plan something for school. So
Okay, so
you
what
want
you
to just
say
give
is
them the
don't
time.
interrupt teachers during their teaching hours because that's going to make you that parent. That's going to drive them crazy
Yeah.
and set their whole day
Yeah.
behind, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, exactly.
okay. Um, so those are some good tips. What other things? What are some common parent blunders or gaffes? Like I know like being late really drives teachers insane. You want to talk about some of those things?
Yeah. Yes, so being late when you're trying to set up a routine is really difficult because then the classroom is obviously interrupted and they want to get everyone into a good routine. So teachers don't like that in general, but definitely it's even worse like the first week of school. Um, Coming in like during teaching time, like while they're trying to teach the class because you have a question, that's also, an interruption that they don't love. So you want to just, again, come in before or after and set up a time. Sending your child to school exhausted or starving. I really encourage parents to have a good morning routine in place because um, it just makes that first week even worse. It shifts your child's behavior quite a bit. So just making sure you have your morning routine in place. And another thing I would mention is if you do have an issue that you want to talk about, make sure you have all the information, like the who, what, when, where, and why, before you talk to the teacher. So you're
Right.
not talking to them and have no idea what really happened.
So you don't come into the teacher completely freaking out, like, this happened,
Mhm.
what are you going to do about it? And they're like, well, when did it happen? Who was it with? And you don't know, but you're just freaking out. So Sometimes I
Exactly.
probably always with any conflict to take a day if you're really upset and and then approach so you kind of go at it a little bit more rationally.
I think
Especially
that's wise. Yeah.
yeah. But when it's your children, it's really easy to just come at just I want answers and I want them now. This is my kid and there's a belief here, which is why I find respectful parenting kind of neat, is that you can view your child as being able to handle it for a day. They're going to be okay and assuming goodwill by the teacher and by the people that are caring for your child. Um,
Exactly.
Okay. What about tips? This is Julie. I see she's watching right now. So hi, how are
Oh,
you?
really?
Um, Julie lives in San Diego and she wants tips on transitioning from small preschool to a larger kindergarten and school, and especially for a slow to warm up child who will be separated from her best buddies in preschool for the first time. So that's hard. Kindergarten is a scary for a lot of people, kids and parents. What do you say about that?
So, I would try if you're able to, like, I don't know if you're going to walk to school or drive to school, but actually simulate that first day experience. Like, okay, we're going to do, wake up in the morning, have your breakfast, and see if you can walk to school, show the building so that everything's not brand new. I mean, it is really anxiety provoking when you've never seen where you're going to go. So, if it's possible, even if you can't go inside, if you can just walk to it or drive to it so your child is familiar with the location, if they didn't do an orientation prior to school beginning, that would be important. If they do an orientation, then you get to be all excited, show your child around, and let them know that this is their new school. So at least they have some questions answered.
Mm-hmm.
I also like to actually walk my child through the first day of school. So, okay, you're going to have a new teacher. There's going to be new friends in the class. Probably a lot of people won't know each other. Usually, the first day you're getting to know each other, so there's lots of games and it's fun. Tell them there's gonna be more children than at your preschool. Just kind of give them a visual, so that again, they're not surprised when they walk in, because that can create a little bit of anxiety, especially for a slow to warm up child. And then if they have any questions, and you can answer them. Again, the solid morning routine is really helpful. If your child is being rushed in the morning, like running so that you're not late, that's very anxiety provoking. Or if they haven't slept well or eaten well, that can impact their first day.
All right, so you
And then the last, I'm sorry.
I'm going to talk about that when you're done talking. You brought that up twice, so I'm going to touch on that when you're done. Go ahead. Don't rush me.
Okay.
Sorry.
And I feel like I'm talking fast, so let
No,
me
you're
slow
good.
down. Then, oh, okay. And then this is the hardest part, but I think it's really important, and I think Kelly mentioned it, is to be confident that your child can navigate their first school day. If you're anxious, you're going to make them anxious too. So just if you just feel really comfortable, my child is ready for this, they can do this, they have the tools with the parenting philosophy I've been giving, providing them with to navigate this day. If you're confident, I think that helps a lot. And even if your child is really nervous at drop off, which is totally natural, like I would let them feel that. I mean, that's okay. You can't take that away from them. But my son was extremely nervous at drop off, but then when I picked him up, he was really happy. So don't assume that their day is going to be awful because they started off a little nervous.
Right. One of the things I tell my kid is, "You're nervous now. I know, and that's going to change. Feelings change, and that's normal, and you're going to be okay." And without trying to tell them that it's not, to talk them out of it and tell them all the reasons they shouldn't
Exactly.
be that way. Let them have it, and then they'll realize, like, wow, I got through it, and I did it, and I'm happy now, and kind of closing the loop on, like, see, you were nervous and you did it, and now you had a great day. Talking about morning routines, so now is the time to start thinking about those. And I'm tomorrow starting to wake my kids up early. Are you still there? You're frozen on the screen.
Oh
Um,
no. Yeah, I'm still here.
okay, well, you'll come back. Um, so start waking my kids up early, a week or two before school, and start getting them to bed on time. And then we have our list, because our school does it this Tuesday. We call them the things. There, you're back. The things. So together we make a list, and the key is together we make a list of all the things that we need to do. And with the non-readers, I put pictures by the list so that they can either read it or look at it. Like get dressed, get socks on, get shoes on, brush teeth, eat breakfast, take your vitamins, whatever it is that you need to do. And so I'm not in charge of telling them what, when, and where, and how, but they can say, what do I do next? And I said, whatever thing you want to do next on the list. Now, usually breakfast we eat together, but they get to pick the order and have some ownership, and it's not so rushed. And then usually we'll spend a few minutes, like when I wake them up, I'll kind of crawl into bed with them and just lay there for a few minutes so that they're feeling a little bit connected and not starting off rushing. So you're seeing the person, not all the tasks, not the chores. Is that?
That's a really, really good morning routine. There's a lot of articles on the importance of connection before you're moving straight into the to-dos, really filling their cup a little with connection before moving into the have-tos and then giving the choices. You really don't want to start your day off yelling at kids and then have them go to school. That's really anxiety provoking for them and probably puts them in a bad mood. So do yourself, your kids, and the teacher a favor by, doing, setting up a really good solid morning routine, which allows everyone to be calm, which doesn't create a need for rushing. If my child is used to waking up late and then we wake up early, he's not going to eat. He's not going to be hungry, and I can't force him to do that. So just getting into that routine a little bit early is really, really beneficial.
Right. So Julie says that her kid would just play the entire time and not get ready. And so that means she does that every day. So that's the key to doing this routine together. You're setting expectations. And if she starts to go play, mine would do that too if I didn't keep them on task. But I say, hey, I see you playing Legos over there. Are all the things done? Which ones are still left? So I'm not yelling at them to go do the things and yelling at them that they're playing, but I'm reminding them like, hey, did you look at the list over there? Like, there's still a couple things I noticed you haven't done. And then you use your like confidence and adultness to kind of guide them over, but not yell at them. So I might touch their shoulders and say, hey, guide them over. Let's go look at the list. So that's how we deal with that. And really including them in their plan ahead of time is really fun for them. So they get excited and like, oh, I did the thing and I did this thing and now I only have one left and I have 10 minutes left and now I get to play. So there's kind of a natural,
Exactly.
like, if I do this, like, whoa, I get to do whatever I want for the last 10 minutes. And that really sets them up. I noticed my daughter when she was in kindergarten and my son was in third grade and they were on different campuses and they started at the same time. So I had to get him to school really early so that I could get her to school on time, which was tricky sometimes. If he had a bad morning, then we were late. And I noticed on the days that we were late, really, really hard goodbyes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I had to work on really hard because I knew it made it harder for her if she went in and people were already busy doing things. And if we got there early and she was able to connect with her friends before the day really started, yeah. So Bethany asks, what kind of things are on their list? It's whatever you want, whatever you decide they need to be doing in the morning. For littler kids, it's like brush your teeth, get dressed. If you want them to make their beds, eat breakfast, take your vitamins, get your socks on. I mean, sometimes with the little kids, it's like shoes, because that's always a big,
Yeah.
your shoes aren't on. It's always the shoes. So it's whatever you want, and you make it together, and whatever the things are that you need to get done before. Sometimes I'll put my things on, like everyone else is ready, but I'm still not dressed. So I put mom gets dressed. And the more you get
Yeah.
dressed and the more that you're ready before they're ready, the less stressed. I notice I get more stressed if I'm not ready when I'm trying to also get them ready because it's like
Definitely.
competing needs. So I try and get dressed, even if it's just sweatpants and tennis shoes, so that I'm not have that at the back of my mind while I'm trying to help them. Okay, I'm going to move.
I would add, oops, sorry. I would add for older kids, also to give them some responsibility, some more responsibility. You can have them in charge of getting their backpack put in. Do they have their homework? If your school has homework, do they have books that they need to return? So kind of building that
Right,
responsibility in the morning too as they get older.
right.
And you don't have to do reminders for the getting dressed or shoes
Right. And
or
your list
stuff
can
like
change. Like we noticed my son was forgetting his home folder. They have a home folder that they have to turn in every morning and it has whatever they need to send home or do and bring back. And he was forgetting that a lot. So we added that to the list. So thanks for bringing that up. And then we have a nighttime list too, where they pack lunches, like just the things we need to do. They don't always pack their own lunches, but on nights when we have time, I'll include them in packing lunches. If my youngest did it by herself, I think she'd just get pretzels, but um, but you build the responsibility and it's groundwork. Okay, I'm going to move on to a question from Ariel. How do you help soothe anxiety with a new school year due to perceived weakness, in this case, time management? So this child thinks he's not good at something or he's not managing his time. And I think this might be a child going into third grade. Um,
Right. Um, so I think that problem solving with the perceived weakness before school begins would be really helpful. And again, engaging your child in that problem solving, which I think fits in with the philosophy, the parenting philosophy everyone has here. So if it is time management, so what can we do to make that a little smoother this year and let them come up with ideas? Is it a calendar? Is it breaking up bigger projects into smaller tasks? Because I like to do growth mindsets and moving away from I'm just bad at that, and moving into I just haven't found the right strategy for me, and let's try something different and see if it works,
mhm.
because that is a more healthy conversation for them,
Right,
better for their self-image. Like I can do this. I just need to tweak my strategy so that it fits me better.
right,
So I would do some of that problem solving before school starts. I also think children are really, really smart and they know kind of big transition periods. And third grade is actually a big transition period academically. That's when they start with those standardized tests. That's when they stop really, they're not really learning to read as much, they're reading to learn. So, and I feel that children are aware of what's changing at school, especially with their peers probably letting them know. So, really talking to your child and talking through what their anxiety may be and just reminding them that they're a year older, what they couldn't do, what was hard for them last year is easier for them now. So, just reminding them that they do have the capacity to meet the challenge, and talking through and problem solving whatever challenges they foresee, I think is
right.
another one. Again, the visualizing the first day, is it new people, is it a new teacher, just making sure they're not surprised. Morning routine we already talked about. And again, making sure you're not nervous so they're not absorbing your nervousness on that first day.
Right. And then now time management. So that might like, I think she was talking about projects, working
Mm-hmm.
on a project and making sure you're not rushing at the end and that makes him really anxious and he thinks he's bad at it. I really like two things that you said is one, change the story that you're telling your brain. So I'm not bad at this. I just need to find a way that works for me. That's awesome. And then the other one is on time management. Do you want to be in touch with the teacher and saying like, hey, time management is something we're really working on. How can you help us do that so that we're both working as a team instead of doing different things? Do you want to loop? That's a good time to loop the teacher in, right?
I think that's a good subject to loop the teacher. And I think it's always good for the teacher to know how engaged and involved you are, and also what you're doing so they can link that, have that homeschool connection. It's really confusing for kids if your parents are doing things one way and then your teacher is asking you to do it a different way. So, but again, I would wait. This isn't a first day of school issue, right? I would wait a little bit and then maybe week two, just
Right. But like
talk to the teacher about it.
when a project is going on and you notice it, like that's a good time to bring it up, right?
Yes,
Not
yes. And then I would share your strategies, how you're working on it, and see if the teacher has strategies that you might like, that maybe, you hadn't thought of. And then involving your child however much you want to, like, should they be there at the meeting with the teacher to talk about the strategies, or is this something you want to do with the teacher and then talk about the strategies, at home with your child? But yeah, thinking of the teacher as your educational teammate is really important. You're on the same team, so sharing strategies, sharing information, making that homeschool connection strong is really important. And then also just having them know that they have you supporting this learning is helpful. It might just take some stress off of them
right.
too.
So that might be one of those things you don't bring up the first week of school. Whereas if your child had some special needs, you would want to bring that up. But that might be a thing to bring, like use good timing. If there's a project happening, then that might be a time to say, hey, I'm trying to support him in time management. What can we do so that we're working together? And I think kids know that school rules are going to be different than home rules. I know you said that that's confusing, but I think Like if it's two separate entities and they're not talking to each other, I think that's what you mean, that it's confusing. There's no like they're doing
Yeah,
this and you're doing this, and there's like I have to bridge the gap by myself, and that's hard.
right.
So when they feel like there's a bridge between home and school and there's a commonality, then I think that makes them feel so secure. Is that what, would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you have no idea how the teacher's handling it, time management, that can be, then the child is the bridge. So I think having at least some data, some information, and you don't have to do it the exact same way, but at least you can talk through your child with all the strategies that are going on, those home and school
Right,
ones.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
having that knowledge is helpful.
Yeah, that I understand. I think that makes sense. Is everybody, I see people out there still like give us a heart or a thumbs up or something if you're there and you're digging it. Okay, so the next question is from Tony. I actually know Tony. She's also how she asks, how do you help a child move away from tattling into problem solving and talk about shaming with the teacher? Um, so her, I think it was her son was tattling and the teacher kind of developed a like it started to bother her, and so how do you
Mhm.
help avoid, he was feeling shamed, how do you help avoid something like that?
So there's two things, two different ways. And first, I'll talk about the teacher part, and then I'll move into practicing the not, practicing different ways of addressing an issue besides tattling. So first, with the teacher, even if you're really triggered by something the teacher is doing, it's always best to, you try to set a meeting and then start off with sharing your philosophy. This is why I do things the way I do. This is how we address, tattling at home. um, if the teacher is shaming or being punitive, instead of saying you're shaming, you're doing this, I think it's helpful to share, this is how I handle what happens at home, and give some really specific examples first. And I always like it when parents bring, if you have an article, it doesn't mean the teacher will read it necessarily, but just shows that you're prepared, and that you're really knowledgeable about the philosophy that you feel strongly about.
Right.
So I think that's helpful. So just not approaching it as an adversarial, but again, like wanting to get your teammate on the same page. So sharing what you do, and then kind of talking through how can we, and since XYZ works pretty well at home, like what can we do in the classroom that may be more effective, and not make him feel, upset, because we want him to be happy and learning in school.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is you don't want to, nobody wants to be accused of you're doing this to my child. And then that's the way to become enemies, mortal enemies with the teacher.
Yeah.
Um, and I like what you said is like you kind of assume like this is what works for him, like not that this is what you should do with everyone, but when this is how we handle it at home and it works when, so that you're just giving her an extra like set of tools of what you've, as your child's expert, what you have found that works with him, so that you're giving her tools that do work, not pointing out ones that don't.
Right, right. It's always best to be, I think being positive is helpful. I think, a lot of times teachers may not even realize, that they're shaming. They might, so just coming into the conversation just with the assumption that the teacher is a professional first, until they give you a reason to really be upset, is important. So yeah, they may have not even realized that the way they're communicating is affecting the child negatively. So just sharing that information, and
Just
being
sharing that,
solution
hey, my
oriented.
child's reacting this way and he's saying this, and I'm kind of just want to find out more about that.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so very like not, it's about how, about the reaction and the child's reaction, and so owning those things and not putting them on the teacher.
Right,
Okay,
right.
awesome.
Because everybody parents differently. So another parent might be okay with the way the teacher handled it.
Right.
Uh, so that's where you're just see yourself as a part of the education team. You're educating the teacher on what works for your child,
Right.
as
You're
you're
like
the expert.
you're one parent of like 50 and each one of
Yeah,
those people has a different point of view, so each teacher, it's going to be hard for the teacher to please everybody. So if you just say what works with my child, that's much less unassuming, I guess,
right.
and just giving them information. um, so what about the tattling though? How do you help the child move away from the tattling?
So I think practicing at home, whether that's with play dates or sibling, so that they're getting in really good practice on, okay, how can we solve this problem without an adult? Like, is this something that you really needed an adult to intervene in? You know, how is this a big problem or is this kind of a smaller, I can work this out with my friend problem? And just having them practice that because it's kind of hard. I feel like we tell people in preschool, or a lot of preschools tell the little guys to just tell the teacher if there's a problem. So now we're shifting as they're getting older, and we're telling them to try to work it out with a friend first. So just being there for them as they're going through that transition, and kind of helping them figure out, okay, what do I really need to speak to a teacher about, and what am I capable of solving on my own? And this is good for them to learn how to advocate for themselves. So it's a really good skill, but it is a skill that, will require some practice. It's not going to happen like that without any practice.
Right. And that's like sometimes I feel like that's a huge shift for kids. Like, oh, I never realized
Yeah.
like I can do something, like I don't have to get a grown up. And that's kind of like a light bulb moment I've seen with some kids. It's kind of like they don't even realize that they could do something different. They're just so used to getting help. Um,
Right. I would add one other thing. I think modeling is really big. So if you can model how you problem solve, like with a friend or a spouse or someone else, like I didn't go to the authorities when this happened. This is how we solved it, or this is how I solved this at work without going to my boss. Maybe some concrete examples too of how you're problem solving
or asking
may be
them like,
helpful.
what ideas can you come up with?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
Okay. Um, Another question, Barbara, I think, asked this one. How do you build a relationship with your child's teacher, and how do you offer help, provide suggestions, and share concerns that lead to constructive conversations? I think we kind of already answered that. Did you have anything to add?
The only thing I would add about offering help is I know we want to kind of jump in there really, especially when children are younger, but just giving the teacher a little bit of time to get the routine together and then setting a regularly scheduled time to volunteer is nice so that they know when to expect you. And if you can't do that, you don't have the time, just making sure they know that you're coming in, so that basically they don't have 10 parents on one day. They usually like to know who's coming and who's not coming so that they don't have a chaotic classroom environment.
Right. So maybe if you happen to have a free day, say, hey, I have a few hours tomorrow. Do you need me? So that it's not surprise, extra parent, and then that throws everything.
Yeah.
Um, how do you go about sharing your curriculum behavior management suggestions with a school? For example, break down the difference between classroom. So you said break down the difference between classroom and global school curriculum.
Yeah,
So,
I wanted to make the difference because if you want to change something in terms of curriculum or behavior management in your child's classroom, then the teacher is the point of contact for that. And that's something, if it's curriculum, you want to be prepared again with resources, with ideas. You don't just want to point out the problem, I don't like X. You want to say, how about we try Y? And then have that prepared and explain why it's important, why you feel it's important, critical thinking, empathy, whatever it is. And then you can have a plan with the teacher of how to implement that if that works. Or with behavior management, if you just want an adaptation for your child in a class, that's a conversation to have with the teacher.
mhm.
Now, if you want the curriculum for the whole school, if you're interested in shifting how something is taught across the school, like, okay, I don't like how Thanksgiving, for example, is taught at any of the school levels. It's not sharing an indigenous point of view. Then that's more of a principal conversation because
Right.
they're in charge of school-wide curriculum. And that might be something you want to get a couple of parents and a teacher who all are on the same page with you, involve, meet, come up with some ideas, and then present some ideas to the principal. I always think there's power in numbers, and coming prepared and with a plan is helpful, just to not waste time or to not put all the onus on the principal to be there. It's like we'll help roll this out if that's something that they're
Right.
able to do.
I think a lot of principals will say, I'm happy to implement changes, but if you have the ideas, like let me hear what they are and help us implement them. And I think another point, if you're really like wanting to have a more progressive curriculum, about racial bias, like you said, Thanksgiving education, just things like that. Um, the power in numbers thing is important. So you don't want to just go in hot with that, right? You kind of want to scope
Right.
out who might be my allies here, and then together in a way that's like, hey, we found this really new thing that we thought our school might like. Can we show it to you? Instead of like, we're not teaching racial bias and we're not doing this. And it's like, hey, we
Right.
found this thing that we all like and we thought maybe you might like it too. Can we talk to you about it? So how you come across is, I think, important. Is it's
Very important.
more
And
teamwork oriented versus like I'm fighting to get my way.
right.
Right. Okay. How, okay, here's one that obviously I struggled with if anyone knows my story. But how do you be a progressive parent in a traditional school environment or with a teacher who isn't? How does that work? Or is that just you have to find the right school for you?
Well, I would always encourage to find the right school. However, if the right school feels like it's the traditional school for various reasons, but you're just a little bit concerned about, curriculum or behavior management, I would again make that first communication with the teacher positive, like a thank you note. And I think that first communication should be a positive one, should not be about concerns or issues. Just making sure you start off on the right foot. And I think, after that, after observing, it would be wise to get in the classroom a little bit and know a little bit more about what's going on before meeting with the teacher. Um, so maybe get in there, volunteer, talk to your child, make sure you have all the information, and then you can talk to the teacher. And I think we've said this a lot, but again, my philosophy, I don't think people hear you if you're attacking or if you're yelling or if you're really upset. I don't think they can hear you. And you really want people to hear you if you want to create change. So coming in, be prepared. Okay, this is my philosophy. This is why I think it's valuable. This is how I think it could be valuable in this classroom. Um, can we talk about whatever it is that you witness that you would like to shift? And I always also encourage, don't just stop the conversation there. Like, what's the action plan? If you don't have an action plan and you just shared your philosophy or your concerns, you don't know how the teacher is going to address it. So I would encourage to come up with an action plan together.
And that's one of
Um,
you help parents come up with action plans, right? Because that's overwhelming
yeah,
if you don't know what an action plan would look like for a teacher. And that's one of the things that
right.
people can come to you or hire you for is like, I'm in trouble with school and it's about to explode. Can you help me?
Yes. Yeah, I do help with the action plans, help map it out, and then I help parent, come up with resources for them to share. And then also I always encourage parents after that meeting to write an email. Okay, we discussed X, our action plan is Y. So it's all in writing, and it's also to make sure that you're on the same page. Sometimes you can go to the meeting to the same meeting and two people understand the meeting totally differently. So I think it's good to follow up with an email and say, this is how I understood what the action plan is. And then if the teacher is like, oh, well, I thought we were doing this, that's just a great follow up to just make sure that you're both on the same page.
Right.
Also, it allows you to follow up in a couple weeks. So, how is this action plan going? And then the last reason I ask parents to follow up is there's a lot of kids, there's a lot of parents. Just the follow up email helps remind them of what you discussed, just so it doesn't get forgotten.
Right. Okay, so we're a little bit over time, but if people want us, we can go and ask the last question, which came in kind of late. But what about social aggression or bullying? How do you handle that? I know I have my opinions on bullying, and I think that that's always a sign that that child has some sort of problem going on that he doesn't know how to address. But schools don't, how do you handle it? If there's a zero tolerance, if there's a restorative justice, what do you do?
Well, if I'm the parent of a child who is being bullied, I always would want to ask all the questions we talked about first, get all the information. Because if the bullying is happening after school or at recess, you actually want to discuss it with the principal and not the teacher because they're kind of in charge of those spaces or that.
Right.
The bullying is happening in the classroom, then you do want to talk to the teacher, but you need to filter first, talk to your child first to make sure this is actually bullying, or if somebody just doesn't want to play with them, then that's something to work out on your own with your child, problem solve together, and not necessarily something
Right.
to bring to the teacher.
It's like, it's really easy
Um,
to slap a label on it and call it bullying, but is it really? What is it? You know, what
right,
exactly is they're just having a problem, and you know, it's normal age appropriate stuff. I'm not your friend is like a 7-year old thing just means I'm mad at you. It doesn't mean they're a bully.
right,
So you want to
exactly,
have clarity on what actually is happening. Okay.
right, definitely. Yeah, and then I would try. I mean, always a lot of times the one that is doing the bullying, there is usually something going on, whether that is a diagnosis, like a medical diagnosis, or something, some kind of trauma that's happened. So when you're if your child is being bullied, just remembering, you don't want to blame the child, or address the child that's doing the bullying directly. I've actually had parents do that, or had stories of parents doing that, because the child is also probably going through something. So if that's happening, you want to really talk it through with your child and talk to the teacher and see the best way to navigate the situation, but do so with some sort of empathy of what the child may be going through.
Right. And that's tricky because you want to have empathy for the child, but you also don't want it to be at the expense of your child. So when it
Right,
escalates,
absolutely.
just really keeping communication on an action plan, I guess, would be appropriate. Would, yes?
Yes, I encourage parents to always say, so how are you keeping my child safe? Like, I'm so glad this child is getting the services that they need. And in the meantime, as we're working on that long-term behavioral change, how are we keeping my child safe? So it's not so much targeting the other child, but really seeing like what can we do for the school environment to keep my child safe, as we're kind of working through, as the school's working through how to get to the root problem of the bullying.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. So wrapping it up, I want again, since some people joined us late and didn't hear your intro, tell us again about how they can reach you and what exactly it is that you do.
So again, I'm Alana Lopez, the founder of Education Solution. You can find me online at www.educationsolutionhacks.com, or you can message me. I'm in the group, so you can message me on Facebook. And
And
I offer parents.
what's your name
What?
again? What's your name
Oh,
again?
I thought I said Alana Lopez.
Okay.
And then oh, and I offer support navigating school issues, including IEPs, personalized learning plans at home if your child is struggling with a particular issue, and selecting a school. Those are the services.
Right. So you offer those kinds of services to parents, whether it's action plans or finding a school or just a quick email. I know that you're offering a quick phone call, 15-minute phone call to find a good fit for whoever. Um, and and so there's Alana's a resource in this group. She's amazing.
Thank you.
And again, I'm your moderator in case one of you or two of you don't know who I am, but I'm Kelly at Respectful Parent. Um, and I hope this has been helpful. I know a lot of you ask for a transcript, so I'm going to try and figure that out. I'm not going to promise it today. I think I can figure out closed captions. I know how to do that. I have to download it and redo it in YouTube and repost it. Live won't do captions in groups. It does it on a page, but not groups. So I know some of you are anxious for that, and I hear you, and I'm working on it.
Mhm.
So thank you. Again, thank you for joining. This was Alana with Education Solution, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Alana.
Bye.
Bye-bye.